at 5.
Across the country, we pause today to remember the victims of the September 11th terror attacks. 14 years ago, planes were turned into weapons. Nearly 3,000 people died at the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and in that field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania.
Many of you remembered by attending ceremonies across the upstate. We'll show you some of those sights and sounds coming up in just a moment.
And of course, near Ground Zero in New York, music and moments of silence marked the moment that the first plane started the horror, hitting that first tower. Friends and family read each victim's name one by one. Marley Hall reports from Lower Manhattan.
The first bell rang at 8:46. The moment American Airlines Flight 11 slammed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. For family members who return to Ground Zero year after year, emotions are still raw. 2,753 people died when both towers of the World Trade Center collapsed.
If I were to have one wish in this world, it would be to meet my dad.
Many clutched photos of their loved ones as the names of the victims were read.
Michael George Archinsky.
14 years after the attacks, Lower Manhattan is rebuilt and thriving again. But New Yorkers and visitors say they will always treat this area as hallowed ground.
When I'm down here, I constantly think about it. I look at what's going on now, and it's a great sense of pride.
At the White House, President and Mrs. Obama paid tribute to the victims. There was also a ceremony at the Pentagon where 184 people died, and in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where passengers and crew fought back against the terrorists and brought down United Flight 93 before it could reach Washington. At Ground Zero, families and friends visit the two reflecting pools and rub the names of their loved ones, determined to fulfill their promise to never forget. Marley Hall, CBS News, New York.
Perhaps, like me, you remember that feeling of intense patriotism that followed the attack. That's why flags play such an important role in all of these tributes around the country. Flags were lowered to honor one of America's darkest days in history.
Today, the Anderson Fire Department sounded chimes at 8:46, the time the first plane hit the first tower. Dozens of people gathered around to help remember that day. The Anderson Fire Department also let people see their piece of the World Trade Center that they have on display there. The assistant chief hopes it will help educate others.
You know, they'll ask the questions about this and where it come from and what's it all about, and we can educate them from years to come.
In Gaffney, high school students and staff started their day remembering the victims of 9/11. This is video of that remembrance ceremony at Gaffney High School. The Air Force ROTC, the Gaffney High Marching Band, and the Teacher Cadet Program took part in that event. Organizers tell us it's important to educate students about that day.
This is a reminder for us who were there at that time to help those that weren't here to remember the tragedy, the suffering, the pain, and how down this country was at that time. Most of our kids were maybe 1 year old at that time, possibly 2 years old, and so we do this as a joint effort here at the high school to show the kids a positive ceremony where they actually remember some of the events of that day.
And take a look here. This is a beautiful tribute that happened in Hendersonville, North Carolina today. The emergency responders and the Henderson County Honor Guard remembered those lives lost. The ceremony was held there at the historic Courthouse Square. The theme, reverence, remembrance, and reflection. In Greenville, a lasting tribute to 9/11. You can go by and see this display of the American flags this weekend. They're lining the entrance to Bob Jones University. It is quite a sight. There are 2,977 flags on display to represent each life lost on September the 11th of 2001. The flags will be there along Wade Hampton Boulevard until 5 o'clock on Monday. And you've been showing us your pictures, too, of all the events that you've been attending on our Facebook page and on our website, WSPA.com. Several more ceremonies are happening this evening, and you'll find a list of those in case you want to go.